welcome everybody then to our event on AI for Assessment and Feedback, a collaborative session brought to you from the International Schools Network and the Independent Schools Portal. Today you'll hear from 4 leading AI providers showcasing some of the most innovative AI solutions that are transforming how schools assess learning and deliver meaningful feedback. From reducing teacher workload to increasing the speed, consistency, and quality of feedback, this session will explore real-world examples of how AI is already supporting more effective assessment and better learning outcomes. I'm going to provide you with a survey link that you can utilise then throughout each of these presentations today. I'll drop this into the chat now, and I'll also drop this in at the end of our session today. This allows you to provide feedback for each of the presenters, provide feedback for the event overall, and it also allows you to connect with our speakers today and to opt into your certificate as well if you'd like to receive that at the end of the session. Please note that certificates can take up to a week to process, so it might be a little delay in receiving the certificate, but it will definitely come in within 7 days. Please use the chat throughout this. So we'd love to hear from you throughout the chat and get your thoughts in here. There will be links dropped into the chat as well throughout the presentation, so please keep an eye on this. To our presenters as well, you can kind of utilise the chat and speak to everybody who's here today. And we also have the Q&A function enabled also, so there will be small bits of Q&A throughout. So hopefully we might be able to answer any questions you might have for some of these presenters as well. Okay, so we're doing really well for time. I'm going to kind of kickstart us just to make sure then if we've got any leeway that we're able to kind of pick that up as well. So kickstarting our event and leading our first presentation today is Martin Crowe from Air Education. Air Education is an AI-powered writing assessment assistant that helps teachers assess writing quickly and consistently. Teachers upload pupil work to generate curriculum-aligned assessments and actionable feedback while keeping professional judgment central. AIR works in and with schools, drawing on over 100 years of collective education experience, and has reduced teacher workload in more than 2,000 UK schools over the past 20 years. So we'd like to welcome Martin for our first presentation today.
Thank you very much, Claire, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. A real pleasure to be here and talk to you a little bit about AIR today. I'm just going to share my screen, so if somebody could just let me know if that's come through. Is that okay, Claire?
Yeah, that looks great.
Beautiful. So AIR comes to you. You may have used an assessment system called O-Track in the past, and it comes from the same people who built and developed O-Track over the years. And it came into existence because we saw a problem that we really wanted to help schools with. The problem of marking and moderating writing in schools has been around for years and years, I'm sure you're aware. And I suppose the time-consuming nature, the subjectivity of marking and moderating writing, and I suppose the curriculum coverage and knowledge for teachers it just all kind of boils together and creates a real issue that schools have struggled to solve through no fault of their own. It's not an easy fix, it's not a quick fix, but what we like to think that does is support teachers and just give them that extra layer of confidence, a reduction in workload, and just bring some sort of sanity, some sort of consistency to the process of marking writing in schools. Excuse me. So the way that AIR works in a nutshell, you would upload a piece of writing into AIR. It will instantly generate feedback on that writing. So it will transcribe the image into text, generate feedback. That can be at individual pupil level or at class level. As you can see, a couple of examples just on that slide there. So the individual pupil feedback to help them improve their work and sort of spot the next steps. And also class level feedback that sort of summarizes as a class what the class have done well and what those next steps are. It will then pull all of that data, all of those objective level outcomes into a coverage grid, which you can see there in the top left, which is so useful in terms of individual assessment, helping you to come to those sort of summative end of term judgments that you need to, but also to inform your planning. So you can see across the board sort of where those gaps are, what's been sort of absorbed and understood really well by your children, and where those sort of gaps are that you'll need to revisit again in the future. Okay, so that's in a nutshell. Let me just get into the system and show you in a little bit more detail. So in the basics of use of Air, you would go in, you can upload a piece of writing individually. So if I wanted to upload a piece of writing for Chloe, I would add an assessment. If I just put in a sort of demo example, I get the choice of uploading against the school writing framework. So it's completely customizable. You will tell us what learning objectives you use or what writing framework you use in school, and we upload that for you. So all of the feedback is against that. It's completely personalized and tailored to what you currently do in school. You can also use it against the DFE framework, the end of key stage 2 TAF. And that will allow you to assess against the complete framework. And that's a lot more useful when you have a portfolio of work. So you don't have to just assess against one piece of writing. You can build up a portfolio in Air and get that sort of holistic feedback against multiple genres. And again, see where those strengths and where those gaps are. So if we just go into the writing framework there and add the assessment, we then upload the work, which is traditionally done by a QR code. So you would take scan the QR code, take an image of the children's writing, and upload it that way. Because I don't have writing in front of me, I can also sort of click here and browse my computer and just upload a writing sample of my own. What Air is doing in the meantime is reading that work. So that's the transcription part. So it's converting it from an image into text. And I can see there, I can see the image of what I've uploaded, and I can also see the transcription on the right-hand side. I'm always asked about accuracy of handwriting and you know, how accurate is it? Does it struggle with difficult handwriting? My rule of thumb is if you can read it as a human, Air can read it as a piece of software. And, you know, obviously it may make the odd mistake as we do with particularly challenging handwriting, or if there's lots of sort of scribbles and crossings out, but generally it's really, really accurate, which obviously means that the feedback is going to be really accurate too. Once the work is uploaded, we simply go in and set the objectives. Now, because I've chosen a year 6 child, it's defaulted to year 6, but I can choose from other year groups. So if you've got children who are maybe working a little bit below their program of study, you can assess them on whatever you need to. But I'm just going to choose a few objectives here to assess against and set those, and simply generate the feedback. And then the feedback you'll see, it's very individual. So you're not going to see the same sort of feedback all the time for every child, but it does follow the same format. I'm just going to make that just a little bit bigger for you. So we always have a teacher level summary, and it always follows the same format of a paragraph of praise to what the child has done really well, and then a paragraph of areas for improvement or next steps. So it's always very balanced. No matter the standard of the work, it will always find some really good things. It'll always find something for the child to work on. We then get a pupil level summary, which is similar sort of content, but it's in much more accessible language. As you can see here, you know, it's much more, this is a year 6 child. However, what you can do is you can alter the reading age of the children. So if you had a year 6 child is again working at say year 2 level, you can adjust the reading age, and that will in turn adjust the feedback just to make it more accessible for those children. You can also edit the feedback if you want to make any changes that you see fit. As I scroll down, we then get an overview across the objectives that I chose to assess. So I chose 3 objectives, and Air is telling me that 2 of those objectives were achieved and 1 has been somewhat achieved. This is where the teacher judgment comes in, because as wonderful as AI is, we still know that teachers understand and we value their teacher judgment over anything else. You understand your children and where they're working better than a piece of software will. So it's really important that teachers maintain that control and have that final say as to whether the child is achieving these objectives or not. So if you agree with her, you've read the work, you've looked at the feedback, we can say, yeah, I'm happy with that, and that confirms that outcome. If I scroll down and I think, well, actually, Air has been a little bit lenient there, I can override the judgment and I can make it a somewhat or a partially achieved objective, or I can say that, no, it hasn't been achieved on this occasion. Again, very frequent question I'm asked is about accuracy. So teachers do agree with 98.6% of the judgments that AIR recommends. So that is across all of our 700 schools across the UK and now internationally as well in the UAE. So we're really happy with that accuracy, but as I say, it's very much for the teachers to say, have that final decision. Another thing I'm often asked is, how do we share that feedback with the children? So obviously live feedback, going around one-to-one, sharing that on your screen with the children in class is a popular way to do it. But one option we also have is to print the feedback on our thermal printers. So if I toggle print mode on, and I decided, right, I want to feedback these two next steps to a pupil, I can highlight and right-click and print. And these thermal printers have sticky labels inside them, so I can print to a sticky label. And what that will do is give me something to put straight into the children's books. And again, save in terms of time efficiency, save the teachers that time of going in and writing feedback on every child's work. So really popular little feature there. It can work with any printer. You don't have to buy those through Air, but it's a really popular way of sharing that feedback. Okay, so all of those assessments, as I mentioned at the start there, the yeses, the nos, and the somewhats, will feed into our coverage grids. Again, I get the choice of assessing against the school curriculum or against the end of Key Stage 2 curriculum. So if I go into school framework, I've got year 6 highlighted there. Just going to make that a little bit smaller. And this gives me an overview, obviously, across my cohort, across all objectives. Now, I'm sure you've seen these before. You'll have used either digital versions or manual versions of these sort of grids. The nice thing about Air is you're not asking teachers to go in and do another job and rag rate all of these objectives for every child. All of the rag ratings pull through from the assessments, and what it does is provide teachers, first of all, with some guidance on how the child is achieving. So I get a breakdown of how many objectives each child has achieved or otherwise. I can also go into their assessment history and see in more detail the past achievements of the child. So this tells me that Isabella has achieved this particular objective 1, 2, 3, 4 times, but on the last occasion only somewhat achieved it. This is great for moderation. This it stops you having to comb through books looking for that evidence of finding a semicolon or a question mark or anything like that. And I can even click on the piece of writing to see that piece and see where it's been evidenced in the past. Okay. It also helps me on a planning perspective because I can look down here, I can see how well each of the objectives has been achieved. This one, for example, using commas in lists, 13 children in the class, so half of this particular class have not achieved that objective. So in terms of planning, I know that's something that I need to go and revisit. Going back to the dashboard, so the final part that I'd like to show you today is the class feedback. So a lot of schools were using Air and they said, we love the individual feedback, it's great, but do you have something? Is there a way of kind of getting a holistic judgment, to just kind of sum up a class set of writing and where are the strengths, where are the gaps? So we've recently, in the last couple of months, released the class feedback. I'm just going to show you an example of a year 4 selection of works. This is just 4 pieces, not the greatest example, but you can see here different pieces of writing that have been uploaded. And I've got this lovely present mode as well. So it will put it straight into a slideshow. I think this is best used in the middle of a piece of writing, and it will summarize what across those pieces, what has gone well, what have the children really achieved. So you can see here, many have used excellent fronted adverbials. There's an example. Many have included, or some have included prepositions. Here's an example. So it's recognizing the great work that some of the children in the class have done, whilst also modeling for those children who haven't perhaps achieved that yet, showing them the sort of thing that you're looking for. Other sections, we've got even better ifs. So these are the next steps for the children. A section on SPAG, so it will pick out common spelling mistakes across a piece of writing, across a set of writing, I should say, grammar, punctuation improvements, a section on vocab, and a section on next steps, which tend to be sort of really nice challenges, extension activities for those who require them. Again, that's all editable. So if you want to personalize this feedback before you share it with the children, then you can do that very easily. And in a very whirlwind sort of 15 minutes, I hope I've stuck to that, Claire. That is what AIR does. And as I say, we're in sort of 600-700 schools across the UK now. And the feedback we've had, just going back sort of to the presentation there, has been amazing. We've got really happy teachers, happy senior leaders, that their teachers just feel a little bit more supported, more empowered in their decision making. And yeah, we're really, really pleased to be able to play that role. Contact details on the screen there. If you would like to hear any more about AIR, please do get in touch. I sort of give you a slightly more in-depth demo than the sort of whirlwind 15 minutes we've had today. So that's it from me, Claire. I
Great.
don't know if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Martin. It was incredible to see that in real time and how that piece of writing then is analysed by the software and how it can pick up all of those individual bits of feedback. A couple of questions we've had. Is this for primary specific? So is this only for primary schools at the moment?
Well, at the moment, yes. Which is why you may have seen sort of years 1 to 6 on the framework. However, we are looking to expand. So if you are secondary only provision, please do get in touch, because we see sort of being even more useful the further up you go, the older the children are. So we are looking to expand in that way. So please do get in touch if you are secondary. We would like to work with some of those schools and just to trial and see how it can work.
Yeah, fantastic. I could really see that whole class feedback sheet. Somebody who's working, say, across 5 English classes, having that whole class feedback sheet as well and be able to see what's landing across the classes would be really
Yeah.
useful. So there's lots of
So
ways that would really work as well across secondary. We had another another question that was just asking about whether this is only available in English at the moment.
it is, yes, it is for English English speaking schools. Again, something that we would look at if the demand was there. And we have recently branched out into the UAE, but it being an international school, yes, we are English only. Yeah.
Yeah, fab. Thank you. And then is it possible for you to share with us a kind of real world example of how AIR has improved learning outcomes or writing progress within a school?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we hear from, so we work with local authorities, we work with sort of moderators across and multi-academy trusts across the UK. One it sticks in my head just for, I suppose, the extra confidence it's given teachers, and just a head teacher who commented on how the writing outcomes actually raised, I think it was something like 20% went from expected up to greater depth. And that was purely due to the extra confidence. They felt that their teachers were very knowledgeable, but they were almost too harsh on themselves and their children. And what AIR did was provide that extra sort of confidence to put a child at greater depth at the end of year 6. And they were absolutely delighted, because they could then, it wasn't just sort of teacher word, it wasn't subjective, there was actually that concrete judgment behind it to back that up and to support those teacher decisions.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for sharing a self-first presentation today. So you can reach out to Martin, the email address was there, but we can share that again afterwards. There were some links dropped into the chat as well. I'm sorry these were quite big. I tried to then break these down into exactly what these are, so you can go in and see what each of these are individually and follow up here as well. But also you can follow up through our survey. Thank you, Martin.
No worries. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we'd like to welcome Michael Southern Augustine, who's head of schools at Quest Progress. Hi, Michael.
Hi Claire, thanks for having me. Morning everyone from finally sunny London. What I'd like to do today is just quickly run you through how international schools are using our platform to support their pupils and get a really good understanding of how they are performing as they move through the academic year. I'll just share my screen and we will jump straight into it. So. I'm going to start with a brief presentation just so you know kind of who we are and why we're in this space, and then I'll actually walk you through the platform itself, how you can use it to set assessments, and then the reports and data that you get on the back of it, and how you can use that to drive interventions, ultimately utilizing AI. But the first thing to highlight is that all of our progress tracking and assessments fall under a new brand called Quest, but we're part of the Atom Learning family. I should flag if anything I talk to you about today you find interesting, feel free to scan this QR code to book in a meeting with me, and we can run through it in a bit more detail. But the first thing to sort of highlight is that we were founded in 2018. We're one of the fastest growing edtech companies in Europe, and we started off with our home and school learning platforms that use AI to differentiate the work that your pupils are seeing either at home or in school to ultimately unlock their full potential. The reason we've moved into assessments and progress tracking is that my role as head of schools is to always be very curious around what is and isn't working. And something that consistently came to the fore is that teachers just didn't have the information they needed following those assessments. And so around about 4 years ago, we decided to sit down with lots of schools, both internationally and within the UK, to unpick what those pain points were. And a whole host of frustrations came to the fore. We very quickly realized that they sort of fell into these main focus areas. The first is that far too often teachers were wasting huge amounts of time marking manually, and ultimately that is not the best use of their time. So our platform automatically marks the assessments that are completed either online or on paper. And importantly, these assessments can be sat in seconds. We do not want teachers spending huge amounts of time and losing 2 to 3 weeks a term trying to complete assessments. There is already too much to cover. And so our assessments are responsive to the realities of school days and again are easy to complete. We also far too often hear that pupils are bending to meet assessments. And so we've been really laser focused on Ofqual's guidance around things like dyslexia friendly fonts. You can turn on full screen mode, add additional time as a default if your pupils require that. You can also turn on things like text to speech. So for our international schools, if your pupils English is not their first language, you can turn this on so that the questions are actually read to your pupils to help ensure they're able to access the assessments. All of that ultimately leads to reporting that you can trust, and we have industry leading data and reports that are available. It is quite a bold claim to make, but I'll show you why I'm confident in making that in a second. In terms of the assessments that we actually offer, you can sit progress assessments up to 4 times a year across English and maths. That could be a baseline when they come back at the start of the school year, and then an autumn, spring, and summer assessment. So you have a really clear understanding of how they're performing. End of year assessments in science, cognitive potential, you may be familiar with CATS, and then well-being and attitude surveys alongside things like dyslexia screeners, multiplication checks, and phonics for reception in year one. The platform, just so everyone is aware, runs from EYFS, so nursery and reception, right the way up to year 9. And by the summer term, we're hoping to get to year 12, as most of my all through schools are really excited to get that. So all sounds great, but the proof's in the pudding, as my granny used to say. So I'm going to share a different screen now and actually walk you through the platform itself. You're more than welcome to trial this if you want to, but what we're going to run through today is how your teams would set the assessments and then the reports and data that they can get on the back of them. To set the assessments, you would click on Set Assessments at the very top here, and you simply then work your way across the screen. We bolt onto your school's MIS systems or registers, so it automatically updates as pupils come or go, and you can then either select the year group you want to assess or the individual forms, or indeed individual pupils if one of them was away on holiday and you need to wrap up your assessments. When you're ready, you'd click next, and you can then see the individual papers. Now, maths is broken into arithmetic and mathematical reasoning. English is broken into reading, GPV, with spelling broken out, so that if they aren't particularly great at spelling, it doesn't tank your GPV score. You can then choose to hold these either online or on paper, as I mentioned, just by tabbing between the two, and you can select them either en masse or individually, depending on what you want to assess. And we're going to go for a mathematical reasoning paper today. I'm going to also complete it online. We would then move forward, determine final settings before setting that assessment, and it will drop into your active and scheduled lists. So as SLT members, you can see absolutely everything that's happening and know who you need to nudge to complete your assessment window. Or as an individual teacher, I can just search for my class to see the papers that I'm yet to complete within that term. We're going to go for mathematical reasoning today. I'll click onto my assessment. I can see all of the necessary resources along the top, like working out booklets that you can download and print. And the next question I usually get is, how do I actually get my pupils onto these assessments? We very quickly learned that emoji codes is the most efficient way to do this. And if you wanted to use the platform, we would create you your very own unique URL. So start.quest/your school's name. You would then be sat down in your classrooms with the devices or your IT suite, and you would hand out those emoji codes to the pupils. And once they've typed in that URL, they would come to a screen that looks like this. Then once they receive that code, they enter it in, and they would be able to jump in and access those assessments. So we'll start with mathematical reasoning. They can work their way through these. If they do qualify for extra time, this becomes dynamic, so they know exactly how long they have for that assessment. And when they're ready, they would then work their way through. The questions will start off easier before becoming progressively more challenging, and they're going to see a mixture of free text and multiple choice. They select the answer they think is appropriate. If they're not sure, they can leave it and come back to it later, but they will continue to work their way through that paper. At the top, they can see how much time they've got. We can also change things like the font size and background colors, as well as turning on those questions to be read. The only thing I would recommend there is make sure you've got headphones so they're not distracting everyone else. And that is as simple as it is from your pupils' perspective. It is worth highlighting that if any of your pupils rush, which I'm sure none of them ever have, we've built things in to slow pupils down. So if, for example, they get to the end of that paper but have missed some questions, a pop-up will say, well done, but you've missed these questions, now go back and answer them. And you can see explicitly which questions they need to go back and answer, and they can then simply click onto it to have another go. Once your pupils have finished the assessments back onto your teacher's screens, they're able to actually track as they go. You're also able to pause the assessments for individual pupils. So if one of them needs to take a bathroom break or has a dentist appointment or anything else, no panic for your teams, just pause it and they can then complete it later that day or that week or whenever they're available. Once you've finished the assessments, you'll click generate results at the top here. And as long as you do that before 5 p.m., the reports are ready the next morning. So you have a very quick turnaround time. And I'm going to quickly run you through what these reports look like. One of the big pain points that consistently came up when I was speaking to schools up and down the country and indeed internationally, whether that's Middle East, Africa, Asia, or indeed the Americas, is that often teachers felt like the data they received wasn't in a palatable format, so they struggled to understand how to use that to drive intervention and outcome. And so we've split our reports out so they're relevant for different stakeholders. I'm going to run you through one of our reports today, which is the class level report, which your teachers would receive, and it helps them understand, what do I need to go and do with my class? What they will then receive in this report. If you want to look through these, by the way, afterwards in a bit more detail, by all means, again, scan that QR code and I can send them to you. But what they will receive is a long list of all of your pupil names mapped to an age standardized score, which in turn is mapped to a performance band. So working below, working towards meeting expectations. You will then move on to a national bell curve, which allows you to compare yourself to your international peers. I can see each of my pupils listed here into their respective bandings before being ranked by standardized age score again. The reason we have done that is that it helps your teachers understand that although Fran has a standardized score of 93, she is very different academically from Chloe, and we need to then differentiate the work that they're receiving to drive their performance. You then come on to things like content domain analysis, which allows you to understand from all of the areas that were assessed within that paper, where are we seeing mastery, but where are the gaps? And in this instance, only 40% of my pupils could answer questions on measuring space. We have then, though, gone ahead and broken that down into your pupil groups. So, what about boys compared to girls? What about your EAL pupils or your SENs? And it helps again understand where we need to prioritize our efforts to ultimately improve the outcomes that our pupils are seeing. You will then get a QLA. This again is color coded to the content domain. Do not be alarmed if you do want to give this a go and you suddenly get data with a downward trend. The questions become more challenging. You'd expect to see that. What you're going to want to look for are those peaks and troughs in the data, showing either mastery or again an opportunity. You then have things like a gap analysis automatically produced for you. No one fighting with an Excel spreadsheet, typing in ones or zeros. It's just completed before moving on to things like a progress report, which again helps you demonstrate, particularly to your parents, the interventions that you're putting in place and therefore the outcomes that they are delivering. And I can track this right the way through the academic career of a pupil and again understand where the opportunities are. I'm going to leave the PDF reports there because there's plenty more I could show you, but I want to get back onto the dashboards to show you the results pages. Now, on the platform, you also are able to see your entire school's aggregate data. But if you wanted to just look at your year fives, you just select year five. If you wanted to look at upper key stage 2, select years 5 and 6. But let's say I'm working with my year 5 team and I want to know what does progress in mathematical reasoning look like for my year 5s. Select the subject, the year group, and you can then track that progress as we move through the school year. But importantly, your teams can see where the opportunity is within the curriculum. Again, we can add in filters here. So maybe I want to compare my boys and girls. And actually, I can see that my girls are outperforming my boys so far. Well done them. But what's driving that within the curriculum? And actually, it's pretty consistent across the board here. So nothing's sort of jumping out at me. But what about my pupils that have special educational needs? And actually, immediately, I can see that their progress is limited. That is a problem. What do we need to change to ultimately improve those outcomes? And immediately, I can see big variations opening up in operations, position and direction, and weights and measures. So I know that that's where I want to focus. All of the views you're going to see now, you can filter, but I'm just going to remove it for ease of analysis. You then have things like a QLA. Again, this is mainly useful for your pupil progress meetings, whereas a team, if you did see a big drop, you can click onto the bar chart and it will take you to what that question actually asked. So you can make an informed decision about what might be causing that confusion. Below all of this, you'll come onto your gap analysis so you can understand the wider themes across the year group. This is also able to be filtered by class. So if you have 5A, 5B, 5C, not a problem, just filter accordingly. Once you've understood the top level, unfortunately, devil is always in the detail, so we have to jump into our individual pupils and you can click onto their names to pull up their scorecards specifically. And what I'm able to see here is how my pupils are progressing. And I can see that actually for Azzy, he's doing really well in maths, but something has gone wrong in English. I can then open this up, understand that actually it's not all bad. Reading was improving. The problem was with this continued drop in GPV. We can then open up the transcripts once the pupils have completed those assessments, see their standardized age score, the number of questions they got correct, and the time that they spent to complete that assessment. Importantly, though, I can understand for Azzy, where is the opportunity for this pupil specifically? And it's in syntax and verb agreement because they're totally unable to access that part of the curriculum. I can then scroll down, review those transcripts, seeing the questions they got correct in green, any questions they got wrong appear in red, but I'm able to see what they selected and also which specific topic within the curriculum was being assessed. A final point to be aware of is that you can also see how long they spent answering these questions. So your teams are really able to start to consider whether this is an issue of comprehension or actually is this an issue of technique and we've got to get them to slow down. We would then go away. We'd put in place interventions in syntax and verb agreement using our AI to drive those and select those questions. And we would then have a lovely term. But importantly, I can then reassess and see have the interventions my team put in place driven outcomes. And immediately I can see, yes, we've turned a corner with GPV. We're now at 86 as a standardized age score. But importantly, is it in the areas we were targeting? And I can see that, yep, for verb agreement, we've had big improvements. Syntax is still a problem. So do we double down? Do we change our approach? What do we do to make sure we're getting the outcomes we were expecting? Final couple of points from me before I will then stop talking. We also, just so you're aware, once you have finished, pupil reports are also automatically generated for your teams. We are trying to find the balance, which I think we've done very well, especially for our international schools where parents are often keen to understand whether the school is driving outcomes, to find the balance of enough information so that parents are really confident in what the school is doing, but not so much that they start to ask too many questions and we open Pandora's box. But it really helps, again, demonstrate as a school the value add that you're providing. And these reports are available with or without scores, depending on your school's policy. We have the rather lovely position of working with the leading institutions, both within the UK and indeed internationally, whether that's, as I said, within Asia or the Middle East or America. And it is not uncommon for us to be saving them a considerable amount of money, particularly if they're moving over from competitors like GL, for example. In terms of the costs, I put this in because if I don't, people always ask me. It's around £1.75 per subject. English is £1.75, maths is £1.75 per pupil. No other costs for training or setup or anything like that. And next steps from my perspective, if what you've briefly seen here today, you think it might be useful for you, please do go and give it a go for yourself. Don't take my word for it. You're more than welcome to trial it with a year group of your choice, and you could sit papers in reading, GPV, mathematical reasoning, and arithmetic. What we would do is just need to know roughly the week when you think you'll be able to hold those assessments, and we would meet with your teams the week before to provide some training. As you've hopefully seen, it is not a particularly complicated platform to use, but we'd still want them to be really confident. So you could go away, sit those papers, and we would meet with you the week after to go through your reports and data, answer any questions you have, and we could then discuss next steps if that was appropriate. How did I do for time, Claire?
Fantastic. Bang on time. Thank you so much, Michael.
Amazing. No worries. I hope that was useful, everyone.
Really, really useful. We've had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
And so a first question was thinking about how is this kind of aligned in terms of international curriculum? So is this available across IB as well as kind of British curriculum as well?
So it follows the British curriculum. So for most of my international schools, there's not a problem. Even if they're following sort of the Cambridge system, they also work really, really well. I've had actually a lot of feedback from my schools in Tanzania, funnily enough, who again were slightly dubious about that. But what they found is that there's really good alignment. It is very important to make sure that we have that because, again, a big problem with I think a lot of incumbents is that we do not want to be asking pupils questions on fractions if we have not taught them fractions, because guess what? They're not going to do well and it's not useful data. So we also looked at a lot of different schemes of learning to make sure that we've got that alignment as we move through the school year, using things like White Rose, for example, to again make sure that they've been taught what they're then being assessed on. The best maths, I think we've got, I would say 99% of my schools are happy. English is slightly more tricky because a lot of my international schools have a different approach to it. So I would say if you are interested in finding out more, again, book in some time with me. We can run through our curriculum maps together so you can check whether there's going to be alignment for the school.
Wonderful, thank you. I had another question also. It's asking how much is shared then with parents? Because are you sharing everything with parents or is it up to the teacher what is shared?
Great question. It is totally up to you. So those reports that we saw, all of the information that you've seen is for schools only. If you guys do decide, yep, we want to use those reports, you literally just download them like so. So just jumping back onto the platform from your results page here at the top, you can see it says download reports. And here's where you get your parent reports. Now that will come as a PDF document and you guys choose to share what you're comfortable with. Some of my schools, for example, won't share data in years 1 or 2, but from years 3 upwards, they then will swap to those reports.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. So we've dropped a link in there as well. So you can follow up here and book in for a free trial following that link. And you can also follow up with Michael then through our survey as well. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Right, we'll move on now to our next presentation. So we're now going to hear from Stephen Craig at Discovery Education. So Discovery Education is a global leader in digital learning and learning tools that bring curriculum to life and support effective instruction with curriculum-aligned resources, including lesson content, immersive AR, VR, and adaptive programs. Discovery really helps teachers to engage pupils and personalize learning and to access progress. Thank you for joining us today, Stephen. We'll hand over now to you.
It's lovely to meet you all. Thanks so much for taking the time to sit to have a look at all of our presentations today. I really enjoyed just looking at everyone else's as well. I should add, I was a former teacher myself for 6 years, taught in the UK, in London, and in Bristol. So I'm always just nosy to see what's going on, and I love going to some of the EdTech events to test everything out myself. Why we're here today? Well, hopefully we've got a program, or indeed programs, but I'm going to focus on one. to kind of support you with mastering feedback and assessment. So Discovery Education is a team full of teachers. We obviously, apart from the tech wizards upstairs, and so we have a content team, we have schools teams, curriculum teams, and everything is designed, with the market in mind. We have teams dedicated to look at what the latest developments are right across the board, and that obviously helps to then inform us, around the program developments that we make. Market feedback is really important as well. So if you see anything today you really like or don't like, or I could be doing better with, please just say. We'd love to listen and work on that. So Discovery has such a large range of programs. So the one I'm going to focus on today is Dreambox Math. There's also a Dreambox Reading. And both of those programs have customizable reports and assessment feedback that I would say is beyond the capability of a lot of the education technology that I worked with in schools. I worked with some absolutely wonderful programs, love them to bits. Discovery ended up acquiring one of them. But what I want to show you today is one of the sort of more high-powered end programs of what we work with. So I'm going to skip a few of the slides because I want to keep it really, really clean and neat. But we are an intelligent adaptive learning program. I'm going to explain that a bit more in just a moment. But the nuts and bolts of it and how I used to talk to some staff when I was indeed introducing technology when I was teaching, or indeed with some of the schools that we work with since, is to say, once the children have a login, you guys as teachers, as educators, as parents will never need to do anything. So the software is set up to look after the children all by itself. So it's going to baseline them. It's called Launchpad that we use. And that's going to put them at the rough level it believes, based on the questions they've answered to begin with, as to where they are. And then it's going to continue to adapt every single time they use it. Now, I feel like quite a few companies do that these days, which is great. We're slightly different because rather than just looking at if you can still see me as well as the slides, rather than just looking at a laddered based approach right across where you kind of move up a concept, you might go from like fluency into problem solving and reasoning if you're doing really well with it. If your child is struggling, you might move down a rung on the ladder. I always like to use the example of like column addition. If a child, before even exchanging or carrying, can't do column addition in its most simple form, the software is essentially going to ask of them, well, can you add numbers on a number line? Like, do you know your number bonds 1 to 10? It's going to take them steps down on the rungs of the ladder and make sure they're secure. So the difference slightly with Dreambox is not only is it doing that, but it's also looking at the how. How have you got to the answer? And I'm going to explain how that works in just a moment, and how then the assessment and feedback side of things can be worked into that with amazing sort of customizable reports that we can do. So we provide continuous embedded formative assessment, and that reduces teacher workload. I feel like that's the thing you'll hear across all programs now. It's a big drive because, the first thing we look at in anything, and I know this from my own experiences, well, how do we make the lives for teachers that bit easier? The workloads are absolutely mental. The to-do list is never ending. So how can we use technology not to replace teaching, because teaching is absolutely imperative, but how can we use it to do behind the scenes work that will just make the teachers' lives that much easier, but of course mean that the children begin to make progress? We start with the engagement of learning. How do we create something that excites learners, that engages them, that makes them develop that love of learning? And then from that, how can we extract information, that shows the progress and everything else? So as I said, the Dreambox system is intelligently adaptive. It generates instant personalized feedback. So it adjusts instruction in real time. So it mirrors the event's focus on, AI that delivers faster, more consistent, more targeted insights. It captures not just answers, but strategies and misconceptions. And that gives teachers meaningful, actionable data, that enhances professional judgment, supports better learning outcomes. And like, with education, I like to keep them interactive when I'm speaking with the schools we work with worldwide, indeed Ministry of Educations we work with in countries, large school groups that we work with. All of that is across our website, and I'm always happy to share with those that have ticked that they're happy for that to be shared as well. But I want to talk a little bit about the evidence, because it's all very well for companies to say, well, we're going to reduce teacher workload and you're going to make X amount of progress, stuff like that. But it's, well, yeah, but how does that look? If I'm a teacher and I'm presenting this to my head, or if I'm a head presenting this to my governors or board, what actionable data can I give? What evidence of impact can I actually show? So yes, we have all the customizable reports, but from the outset, we've had lots of independent research done from third parties. Not something we requested; it's been done. We always get requests for studies. I think partly because the name Discovery Education, and we were affiliated with the Discovery Channel. We broke apart, and that's often a question we get asked, particularly from schools we work with worldwide. But the proof is here. 58% growth, not quite 60. So I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but 58% across 60 minutes per week. So if the children are logging in and they're doing, let's say, 3 to 5 lessons, because a question I usually get asked is, well, how often should we use it, Steve? And it's, of course, all dependent on what works for you guys, and we'll work with you for that with all the support we give, which I'll come to. But around 60 minutes per week, 3 to 5 lessons. If you can do that, whether you're using it at home, whether you're using it in class, people use it for interventions, whole school, whole class activities in terms of plenaries or timetabled in. I'd say less so with whole class teaching. We do have schools that use it that way, but just speaking from my own background, I would say the power is in the personalization. So I would use it in other areas. That's how I use some adaptive technology in my school. Dreambox wasn't available to me at the time. And so as a result of that, the progresses there at Harvard University have told us. We can skip through this. I think I'm going to make an assumption that quite a few people on the call are aware of adaptive technology to an extent because it comes up. If you're not, I've put my contact details in the chat already. So please do email me. You don't even need to book. If you want to book a time slot, absolutely fine. But if you want to just send off an email to me to ask any questions that you have, it doesn't need to lead anywhere. If you want to trial, you have a free month. We often do extended trials as well to support you guys that fit in with like term times. You might have particular exams or something that come up and you want to schedule it around that. Absolutely fine. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about that at the moment. What I'd like to focus on is what I think separates Dreambox from some of the other programs Discovery have, but indeed some other programs out there. All great programs. By the way, it's got to be whatever works for you as a school. But just something I get quite excited about because I'm a big geek. So it's the how. So I talked about the ladders in terms of adaptive learning, but Dreambox is more of a mind map. It's more of a self-directed, continuous adaptive learning path, as it says on the screen, that can go in many different directions. So let's practically look how that plays out in a really simple context and example. So we've got 4 kids. We don't need to know about all of them, but let's say we're using some of the practical manipulatives on the screen, really straightforward, basic one here, adding on a maths rack. And we might have a child that is simply counting. So they get the right answer. They get the 29 to add 50 is 79, but they've not used the most effective strategy. So that would probably be me, just counting away like that, got there, done, boom. Whereas someone else, another child in class, might be able to group. They might be able to count back. They've advanced their strategies further beyond the other children. So on paper, it would look like they've got exactly the same answer. So the typical adaptive systems that I've worked with before, like I said, all really good. They might look at how long the child's taken to answer. They might look at, obviously, if they got it right or wrong, what support they've got, because obviously there's support built into all of the lessons they have. So explanations and lessons within themselves. I think people often use the term kind of e-tutor. It's like having your own e-tutor. But how they've got to the answer could be entirely different. And that would help inform the kind of strategy, the kind of support that would be needed for those children in intervention in class. And that's how it works. So yes, it's adaptive. Yes, it does a lot of the things I think that you probably, as teachers, come across, but it's that extra level there in terms of intelligently adapting it. It's where our system is finding the right strategy for them. There's a couple of other cool tweaks around it, which I'm going to come to now as well. But before I go too much into the child side of things, even though I think that's the primary goal, is to get them engaged and excited to use it, get them set up, and then start looking at building in, okay, well, the assessment side of things, how are we going to use this alongside the assessments we do in school? How are we going to set our own assignments if we want to do some pre-teaching or consolidation activity work, which is something I used to do? kind of let the program, a different program, but run itself throughout the week, and then on a Friday set, two pieces of work. I might be looking at some books and going, well, you and you need to get better at this. You need some support here, probably because they had a terrible teacher, and then some of you need to be advanced on. So again, using software to just turn around, go tick tick tick, set work, and then I might have a lesson coming up the next week, and I love using the example like converting mixed number fractions, and you've got children in your class that can't remember what a numerator and denominator is. I was predominantly year six. And so you're looking around thinking next week is going to be tough. So setting that work ahead of time that helps differentiate, that helps make your starter input that much easier, so that when you come to the lesson itself, more children have got it than would have done otherwise if you hadn't had that technology in place to just make that life so much easier for you. And I think for me anyway, and as I said, this was with a less powerful program. It is one of ours still, and I still love it. But the Dreambox, that just made my teaching that much easier. I had less frustrated children in class because there was such a breadth of needs that I was dealing with. And that allowed me, as I said, then to kind of dive into the lesson, get through things at a pace that was comfortable then for more children in the classroom. So how does assessment look? And what can you actually do in terms of customization? I'm used to software that has effort, that has progress, that has understanding. Three really cool things. And for some schools, by the way, that might be all you ever need. If we're speaking with some particular schools around the world who are quite new to EdTech, I tend to look at one of our other programs sometimes ahead of it, because I think that it's all about the path and journey you're on, what the capability is for the teachers, the students, what they're going to access. But if you want customization, right across the board, Dreambox is the way forward. So how does that look? If you want to create reports looking at boys and girls, if you wanted to look at special educational needs, English additional language, if you had particular markers that you've set up in your system, in your LMS at school, that you want to use within Dreambox to change that, you absolutely can. So there's an initial standing level that's calculated in order to define each student starting point for the year, and then growth is reported daily. So it's all live progress made from that point, Paul. And I don't like to spend a huge amount of time during presentations talking too much about the detail, because we provide free training, we provide free PD. We also have ongoing support, not just from help centers, which every company has, but we have Dreambox University. We have loads of different ways that you can build more continual professional development, that you can learn exactly how much or little you want to do. If you want to give the children the device and say, off you go, fair enough. If you want to, as I imagine most people do on this particular meeting, build it around your assessment framework at school as well, and embed it by setting work constantly, assessing data, using it as a benchmark. Absolutely, that is what you can do. It's as much as there is little, because there might be the odd person on this call who's thinking, actually, we just want something that's really easy, off the shelf, give to the kids, off we go. And it does that too. I just want to flick back to lesson highlights. I particularly love it. It's not loading, which is really good, but you don't need to see anything anyway. Lesson highlights is really cool, because that's where everything the child is doing is recorded. So I don't mean the child itself, because that wouldn't be allowed, but it's obviously where they're clicking. So if you as a teacher wanted to see what strategies the children are using, where they're struggling, you can do that. I do talk about this with some caution, because again, taking myself out of my role now and going back, I wouldn't have had time to do that for 30 kids every day. So I think lesson highlights is really useful for intervention children, or children you're looking at specifically for a particular target. It could be you take a few each term. Some teachers don't use it at all. But what you might be gathering from some of this is, my goodness, this seems like it's quite involved. There seems like there's quite a lot going on with it, I hope. And that's why I always like to bring it back to the fact that, yes, there is so much you can do with Dreambox, that when I first meet with schools, I talk more about, let's get you started with a free trial. Let's test it out, see how you find it, see what the children's reaction is. And then let's work together if you want to customize, if you want to get into that level of detail that's going to work for you as a school. I don't really like reading slides, but I'll just take the highlights. So truly adaptive, yes, conceptual understanding, not just practice, continuous embedded feedback, and supports differentiation at scale. What I will say as well, just quickly, is if any of you are on the call thinking, we don't, you might want something more detailed, but like if lots of you are thinking, actually, we want something more off the shelf, Doodle Learning is another one of our programs. It's an adaptive learning one. That's one of the ones I was talking about in terms of the laddered approach. I used to use that, love that program. And we also have Dreambox Reading, and then we have a range of teacher resources. So I would highly recommend, I've put it in the chat, just going onto our website, so discoveryeducation.co.uk.com. We have the American US, so we appeal to loads of curriculums as well. I haven't seen any questions, but if you've got any questions around that, which I'm sure you guys can message me about as well. We do have a wide range of programs. Again, if you want to look at STEM Connect or science-based programs, we have all of that. We don't have a science adaptive program. It'd be really hard to create one, but I would absolutely love to one day. I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to come back off and just to say thank you so much, everyone. And if you've got any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So a couple of questions that I had, and I think and we may see more kind of pop up in the chat and the Q&A as well. So you talked there about that pre-learning and how effective that can be then for those learners. Is that available for reading also? Is that just available at the moment for
Yes.
Box Maths?
No, absolutely. Yeah. So it's so Dreambox. So the Dreambox math runs from K8. So it's like, sort of year 1 to year 9 children. And then the Dreambox reading covers a huge range. It's pre-K reception right through to end of key stage 4. So it's really wide, and it has that pre-assessment as well. That's built into all of our adaptive learning programs. Great question.
Thank you. And can you also share with us maybe a testimonial of how this has really helped an international school, so we can kind of learn a little bit more about a school that you've really had an impact in?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best thing to do would be to go on our heat map as well. So we have a website page directed literally to all the case studies you can need from around the world. I think one of the best quotes we have is from some of the work we did in Florida, which is that they made 3.1 points of progress across the entire state in 1 year, which was absolutely massive. So the impact, as I said at the start, from our Harvard University studies and what have you, is there. It's about 60%, 58% on average, but that does differentiate. When it comes to international schools, it completely depends, on what their focus has been. Like I said, if it's an off the shelf, go and use it. We have evidence to back that up. But if also it's a school that wants to use it across all assemblies, get parents involved, everything else, then they absolutely can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
My pleasure.
We've just had one question pop in very quickly, as we've got an extra minute. Are the contents of the reading, are they internationally geared or are they UK focused? Somebody has asked.
Yeah, great question. Both, depending on which programs you use. So Discovery Education is an American company, so they have a lot of American programs that have been then tailored for the English and indeed other curriculum markets, and you can be translated into different languages. And then we have other programs, like for example, Doodle Learning, that started off in the UK. So it depends. Again, if you've got a specific program that you're interested in, just drop me a line. I'd be happy to help. I can also see that somebody's put millions of self-directed. I know that was my question, Annabella, as well, when I started, because the program I'd used before had tens and tens of thousands. I was like, it's a bit of an upgrade, but I've been told that is actually true. So again, if you want any evidence stuff, let me know. I'll send you some case study information over.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. So
pleasure.
You can follow up then, with Stephen through the email links, but also through our survey as well, so we can connect you afterwards if you'd like to learn more. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your time, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Okay, so now we're going to hand over for our next presentation. So we are going to be talking with Kendall Benny from 3P Learning. So 3P Learning is a global leader in digital education solutions, supporting numeracy, literacy and writing, trusted by millions of students in thousands of schools worldwide. Their curriculum-aligned programs such as Mathletics, Math Seeds and Reading Eggs combine personalised learning with powerful data insights to help teachers track progress, motivate learners and inform teaching. Welcome, Kendall. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me, and to everybody for the time that they've taken to join us. I hope you've all got some brain space for a little bit more. It's been very exciting so far, but there's more to come. I'm going to share my screen very quickly. So I like to just start with my details, because while I move on to the next slide, 3P Learning's been around for more than 20 years. It's an Australian-based company with 20 million learners around the world. Obviously digital focused. And while we are a huge digital company, we really value personal service. So wherever you are, you're always going to have a person to talk to help you with any questions and answer anything that you need, along with the digital support that you find online. And really to know that we aim to inspire a love of learning. So all of our programs really provide meaningful personal learning experiences through our exceptional education programs. We were designed by teachers, so it's not a recent program that's specifically AI, developed through AI. We've actually had teachers coming to us with real problems based on real classroom situations, and all of our programs have been developed through their experience. To talk a little bit about myself, I started out as a teacher. I spent 20 years in the classroom and eventually became very excited when I came across 3P Learning's programs and what they could do and how they excited children to learn. So I often tell the story of how I would put a whole list of work up on the board and say, when you finish this, then I would let you do some more work on whichever device it was, whichever program. And the fervor that went through the class, the excitement that children got in order to finish tasks that needed to be done and then go and do more learning in a program that they really enjoyed, they often didn't even see as learning. So, one of our focuses is on making the learning fun so that children actually feel like they're playing. And essentially, children learn best through play. So onto that, moving on, our focus at the moment is really the three essentials: reading, writing, and maths, all combined into the one program, very similar in the way that they're structured. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. So obviously interactive activities, motivating rewards, explicit instruction, differentiated learning with the feedback and assessment, and then the robust reporting. And if I can just talk, we're talking a lot about the feedback and assessment from a teacher's perspective. But one thing that really does make a very big difference, and I've had this experience personally, is the feedback and assessment from a student's perspective. I always give the example of my son's writing something, handing something in, getting the results a week back, a week later, and not really caring why something was right, why it was wrong. They would just come with an attitude, oh, I got 60%, I'm not very good at this subject. But then when they're on a digital program and the feedback is instant, and it's instantly telling me that's wrong. The number of times my boy said to me something like, Mom, there's something wrong with the computer. It's telling me I'm wrong, because they're convinced their answer is right. And that immediate jolt of, I'm wrong, what's wrong? Why is it wrong? How do I get this right? It's really helps train the learning so much quicker. It helps train those pathways so much quicker than when they're doing that written instruction. And not only that, it builds their confidence so that then when they come into the classroom, having had that practice online, they get into the classroom and they're more willing to engage because they've got more of an idea that they're right, or that they've got an idea of where this is going through that little bit of practice. Okay, so our full suite. There's the literacy part, which is reading eggs and fast phonics, explicitly teaching your phonics. Reading Express moves into your comprehension and your reading for meaning. A library of over 4,000 books with the comprehension quizzes, all with the assessment built into each and every part of the lesson. And then we've got our writing part of the program, Writing Legends, and then the two maths parts, math seeds and mathletics. So most of them start with the placement test, which places students on a learning journey. And, I give the example here in South Africa, we have classes up to 60. And to be able to have each child working in their zone of proximal development at their own pace takes so much pressure off you as the teacher, because you know that each child will be met exactly where they are. You as the teacher obviously have the ability to reset tests, to change levels, and ensuring students are on the right level is kind of one of the most important parts of the program. And from there, teachers can then engage as much or as little as they want to. So you can have the program teaching some concepts for you, or you can be using the program to teach those concepts, and then the assessment is automatically built into it. So the results go to you and to your students. This is what some of the learning journeys look like. This is one of the very early stages of reading eggs. You can see it's highly engaging and motivating through those rewards. As I mentioned, every aspect has some kind of assessment and feedback into it. Always a lot of fun to engage your students. And then a variety of areas that they can challenge themselves as well. So then teachers obviously have the ability to hone different areas, or they have that option to allow students to progress in their own. And one of the examples that I like to give with the maths is allowing children to go and explore maths. Maths is such a language that teachers often tend to want to control exactly what they're teaching and when they're teaching, where you have that ability, but you also have the ability to allow children to go and explore on their own. And I have an example of a teacher who said that one of her biggest problems was children coming with cookie cutter maths, in that they could only do maths according to the recipe that the teacher had taught them. So what the program allows them to do is to actually go and explore and try and see if they can learn the language of maths by exploring on their own. And of course, all that automatic feedback allows them to know, yes, I'm getting this right, no, I'm getting it wrong. And not only that, but you're going to have the ability to go and find help. When you are told that it's wrong, what's wrong, why is it wrong, then you can get the help. Of course, we have a variety of detailed reports, beautiful charts that you can work with that can all drill into a variety of different details, either through your chart view, your table view. You can sort from where your students started, highest lessons completed. You can have a look, how long is it taking them to complete, or how much are they having to repeat activities in order to make their progress. You can look at their Lexile levels. So I've recently got a school that's on the Cambridge curriculum that is specifically using those Lexile levels to find the books that students should be reading and to keep them in those groups. Individual reports that go into a variety of details, right down to the kinds of questions that they're struggling with, how they're doing with literal questions. Is it inferential questions they're struggling with? Are we looking at vocabulary and usage, or text analysis and critical literacy? And then from there, you've also got the resources within the program to go and teach a specific lesson on those literal questions. How do you make an inference? And that can be from both the students' digital lessons as well as physical resources the teachers can download. So not only are we offering that digital side of things, but there are also physical resources that reinforce those digitals, because so often teachers will be doing this digital lesson, but then they want it in a physical writing out. And our resources beautifully match those, the digital with the written out part of the story. Your teacher's resources, you can set assignments. So while the students are working through their learning journey, you as the teacher can specifically call out a lesson, drop that on the students. They then work through that. And that's great for benchmarking. While I say you may have 30 children all working at different levels, there are times where you want to specifically assess according to one particular assessment, and you have that option to do that and then check your results. A variety of ways of looking at results. So, I'm skipping between your programs. This is mostly your reading eggs, your writing legends, your math seeds. With mathletics, it's going to allow you to drill down into recent results, results by student, or results by an activity. And then as they work through these activities, as I was saying, you get that instant feedback for the students. So they've seen what they got right and what they got wrong. And when they got something wrong, what's wrong? Why is it wrong? How do I get this right? The help is available for them immediately to show them what they're doing wrong, how they're doing it wrong, and how they can actually get that right. And that can range from a PowerPoint type demonstration through to a little video, or your maths A to Z dictionary. Here you've got a question, you don't understand what it means to factorize, and it's going to show you, you put it into your maths A to Z dictionary, it's going to show you both in words, numbers, and videos what it means to factorize, and you can then come through to try your luck at that. And if you get it wrong, again, it's going to automatically pop up with the help. And if you keep getting things wrong, it's going to tell your teacher that you are constantly getting it wrong and that maybe you need a little bit of extra help with this. So it looks like you might need a little bit of extra help with this topic. So that's what's going to pop up, and it's going to pop up on your screen that the student is struggling with this topic. So they can either carry on trying themselves, or you can come in and bring your own intervention with it. So essentially what we're aiming for is more time for teachers to teach. And I like to give the example from the New Classrooms video where they talk about you teach your lesson on fractions, half the class understands, half the class doesn't understand. What do you do from there? Do you carry on teaching, leaving the first lot lost and confused? Do you repeat the lesson, leaving those who understood bored, frustrated, and disruptive? Our programs allow you to take those groups, allow those that understand to move on, while you call in those ones that need the extra time to spend that extra time with you. And with that instant feedback from the program, you can very easily see who's in which group and where they need to go from there. All right, I've shown you the reports. And then just to look at the writing side of things. So, each of the parts of the program has those lessons. So it's going to be teaching the children about your capital letters, your full stops, about adding your adjectives. And then it gives them a chance to practice that with that feedback. And then after the lesson, you can take them into exciting writing ideas. And these exciting writing ideas are full of great ideas. I mean, the one example there is you've got a ghost house, try and write an advert on the ghost house. And then it gives the students that feedback that allows them to then, or actually encourages them to go and edit their work. One of those skills that teachers spend a lot of time trying to get children to do. It's going to show them where they've gone wrong and then how they can improve on that before they send the work to you as the teacher. Once again, it will be automatically assessed for you to have a look at as a teacher, and then you as the teacher have the option to override that, send a mark back, give them a little reward in terms of some kind of a sticker and your feedback. All right, it also allows for a lot of gamification. So that's one of the things that we do, is almost to make your learning a little bit like a sport. So you can actually have a little bit of fun between, it's great fun if your teachers are a little bit competitive too. So we can have a look at these reports and this assessment, and we can see that the grade 3s are leading in the comprehension. And I can say, come on, grade 4s, we can't let those grade 3s beat us. We're going to make sure everybody gets in and gets some work done this term. Same with the spelling. The grade 2s are winning. And then, we really do aim to be a resource that's going to get you where you want to go to. So we're covering those 3 essentials, as I said, with loads of digital service and the personal service, digital support and personal service. And behind all the AI and tech, there's always going to be someone that can help you to get you where you want to go. And I think that I'm actually even ahead of time.
Yes, doing very well. Thank you, Kendall.
All right.
A couple of questions that I had to pull this out a little bit more as well, and we might get some more in the chat as well throughout this. I mean, you were really right to mention that kind of taking students and placing them in a position where they're reflective on their feedback rather than just receiving it and thinking, well, that's what it is. It's such a skill, as you mentioned, for students then to kind of digest that and try to build on that feedback. So it's great to see how 3P Learning is doing that and really kind of encouraging that for young people. Is there a way then that you monitor how effectively they're doing that, how they are reflecting on the feedback and improving their work?
Absolutely. You can see very clearly how many times they're having to repeat activities. The program works on a concept of mastery. I'm not sure if any of you have watched the TED Talk by Sal Khan from Khan Academy, but he does a really good talk talking about how one of the biggest mistakes we've made in education is saying that 50% is a pass. And he draws the analogy of building a building, but you only put in 50% of the foundation. And the building inspector comes along and says, go ahead, build the next floor. He says, no wonder by the time children get to grade 5 and 6, the building is collapsing. So all parts of the program are going to encourage you to repeat an activity until you actually get that 80%, so that your foundations are strong enough to build upon. And what you can do then is you can see, how often is the student having to repeat an activity in order to get that 80%? What is needed? Is it more intervention from me as the teacher? Or is it just somebody that needs to just try again? Just take your time, work through it carefully, look at what's right, why is it right, what's wrong, why is it wrong, how do I get this right, and move on from there. We do have some children that do just rush through, going click, 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 click. And sometimes those are the children that do need to be slowed down a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Another question was, how do you, what's the best practice for this in terms of integrating this for teachers? Do you recommend that there's a set time that they use to kind of start using 3P learning? Is there, what are the best practices around this that you found for educators in schools?
There are such a varieties of ways that teachers use our programs. So we've got right from teachers that are using it purely for homework. It's purely an extra resource that you take home that goes and reinforces what you've done, right through to teachers that are using it to teach in the classroom every day. We've got homeschoolers that are using it. It's really designed to be flexible according to your circumstances. And as I was saying earlier, teachers can start at a certain point and really work their way into the resources. So it allows teachers that are a little bit more hesitant with digital resources to incorporate it without having to take on a whole lot more on top of what they're already doing, right through to the teachers that want to incorporate it into everyday teaching, learning, feedback, assessment. It's all there for you according to your circumstances.
Wonderful. And then last opportunity then, would you like to share with us kind of a testimonial where this has worked in a school internationally or in South Africa, and kind of give us kind of a testimonial of how that's affected their outcomes for their students?
It's a little bit hard to choose because there are so many fantastic stories. One of the ones that I really enjoyed, though, was it was a group of grade 3 children that were all earmarked for repeating. And it was done in America, and they had their summer school. And in their summer school, they were given reading eggs, reading express to work through. And within a month of using the program, all of them progressed to the point where they could move on instead of having to repeat their grade 3 year.
Oh, fantastic.
And that can be from as little as 15 minutes a day.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. So you can learn more about 3P Learning following the link that's been dropped into the chat, but also you can follow up then utilizing the survey. I'll drop that into the chat now again for everybody. So this enables you then to follow up with each of our speakers to provide some feedback for us, for the event in general, and also then to opt in to receive your certificate. A little reminder again that certificate might take up to 7 days to come into your inbox, but it will come in. Thank you everybody for joining us today. It's been a fantastic session. We hope that you found this as rich and valuable as I have, kind of sitting here and listening to these presentations and thinking about, I left teaching about 4 years ago now, but how I'd have loved to have used some of these programs when I was teaching. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm just going to pull this up here. Okay, and so we've got lots of thank yous from people, but also no further questions in our Q&A at the moment. But any other questions that come in, I'm sure you connect then with our educators through the form, but also you can reach out to people on LinkedIn and find out more there as well if you want to kind of ask further questions. Thank you, everybody.